again, I promise this is the last time you'll see me on this stage, but it's great to be back here with Kent Masters. Thank you so much for joining us. Yesterday, we had a great global panel on lithium leverage, and we had your colleague Eric on stage for a panel on how government and industry can accelerate critical minerals security. So knowing everyone in this room definitely took great notes and was very attentive to those conversations, you have Kent and mine's commitment that we're only going to build on those discussion points, but today with a special discussion on US production specifically. So in the recent executive orders, the administration has clearly signaled the intention to increase American production of critical minerals, both mining and processing, recognizing that doing so is essential to unleash American energy and enhance our national security. Albemarle has multiple operations in the U.S. lithium sector, including a direct lithium pilot project in Arkansas, the United States' only producing lithium mines, Silver Peak in Nevada, and its Kings Mountain operation under development in North Carolina that was used in World War II. Maybe we'll hear a little bit about that. And then finally, the R&D facility you have in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So you're very uniquely positioned to speak how the Albemarle can unleash the American production of critical minerals, as well with your visibility in kind of the global marketplace. So my first question to you is exactly that. How do you see your role in doing this and the connection to the energy dominance agenda that has really captivated this city in the recent months?
Right. So first I would say, well, thanks to SAFE for having me here in this conversation. So we're very excited about the executive orders and the focus the administration has put on critical minerals. We think we do play a big part of that, in bringing that to the U.S. So when I say critical minerals, I mean lithium, right? So it is a broad array. I know I appreciate that, but when my comments typically are about lithium, and we use those interchangeably. So we do operate in the U.S. We're the only company actually taking U.S. lithium out of the ground and processing it and selling it in the United States. That happens from Silver Peak, Nevada, and then in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, when we do final processing there. It's small in scale relative to our global footprint, but it is in the U.S., and we have resources in the U.S. that need to be developed. And we've been on this journey for some time. So about 5 years ago, our strategy was to pivot to the West, which was all about moving to the Western world, but really North America, Europe at the time. And we've been on an investment program kind of to accomplish that. And we were pretty aggressive investment program. And about midway through that, the bottom fell out of the lithium market. So we've had to adjust. So we've pulled back from that investment and taken cost out of the organization. So it's an unusual dynamic with a market growing at, say, 20% a year, and a very strong market, but prices have come down. We generate most of our cash from lithium. We have a couple of other businesses, but the big majority is from lithium, so we had to adjust to that. And now, with this push in North America, we have the same dynamic. Prices are very low. Project returns don't really make sense if you use today's price. So the real question is, can you look through those? How would you fund it if you choose to look through it? And I think I heard it in a couple of other presentations that I'm not sure private industry can do this by themselves. I think we need to work with government to accomplish that.
Yeah, and I think it necessitates a degree of creativity. So it's been great to see the different types of financing tools that are being invoked to essentially deal with that market challenge in place, especially as we build up supply with, as we talked about backstage, somewhat zigzagging but upward demand in major lithium applications. Yesterday we heard, and today, that the U.S. has a permitting challenge when it comes to mining. It has a competitiveness challenge when it comes to processing, and then that we have workforce challenges across the entire stream. So developing technology is not enough. We have to start executing and improving processes at higher levels so that we can level the playing field. As a company in both, you described kind of your operation footprint, and we can see it on the screen behind us, and both the up and midstream. Do you agree with those assessments? Are those the biggest challenges you're facing? You mentioned kind of the price dynamics as well, but how is your company addressing them across the board or specifically?
Yeah, I think, with respect to the U.S., so permitting, it is an issue, but it's not the biggest issue from our standpoint. Okay. So Kings Mountain, we're in the middle of a permitting process. We hope to have that permitted by the middle of next year, maybe late next year, to get through that. And if we're successful in that time frame, it would have been a 5-year process. Pretty fast for a mining project, but it is a brownfield site that was in operation previously, and it's in the area is used to mining, so I think that has something to do with it. So the technology, there is technology development that is moving and moving forward in this space. A lot of the technology, particularly around conversion, sits in China, is owned by China. We are actually able to operate outside of China. We have the only conversion facility converting hard rock outside of China in Australia. So we have that. We've broken through that. We continue to develop it. And workforce is part of it, but a smaller part. I would say the biggest piece in our view is the pricing and the economics of projects and getting, we have to break the low price conundrum that we're in order to justify projects and to get private companies investing in the space.
So just a quick follow-up on two things you just said there. The first is, don't want to take wind out of the sails of people working really hard to get permitting reform in this country. So maybe could you speak a little bit more to why North Carolina has been effective to get you that permit in the 5-year timeline I think you just described. And then I really think it's important to kind of foot stomp the brownfield aspect of that project because it does change some of the social acceptability and also just has a lot more of existing surrounding infrastructure when you're leveraging those sites. So maybe that's a bright spot for the United States to look to within our existing permitting regime. Can you maybe speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, so this is the first mine we've started from scratch, right? So our other mine that we bought into, so we didn't start one from scratch, but we were very aware of the community issues, permitting issues, so we spent a lot of time up front of that. We were in touch with the authorities at least 2 years prior to asking for permits or even starting the process. Mm-hmm. We've done a lot of work with the communities. We've gotten some DOD grants. Some of that money we use with the local community college for workforce development, one of your points earlier. So we've been working with the community and developing that. I do think the fact that it is brownfield, it did operate, and that the community is used to mining. So it is brownfield, but adjacent to us is a rock quarry that still mines today. So it's an operating mine, even though our portion of the mine is not operating. So the community is used to that. It's not new for them.
Mm. And then my second follow-up question was just digging a little bit deeper in the price dynamics. Obviously, we have compared to other critical minerals on the list, we're in a little bit of a better standing when it comes to lithium. The most recent minerals commodity summary put us at just over 50% import reliance, but it's important to not kind of lose the thread on the importance of developing the domestic sector despite, it not being as much of a reliance compared to, the 100% minerals that sit at the top of that bar graph. But having to deal with kind of the geopolitics of lithium despite kind of the import-export dynamics, pricing plays into that, right? So we're dealing with some levels of oversupply, some levels of price manipulation in certain commodities. I'm just curious what tools you would apply to kind of deal with the global picture for lithium markets that are in some ways hampering the dynamics you talked about. Some of it's economic too. I don't want to overstate it's all manipulation, but what should the U.S. do to focus on those elements of challenges?
Yes, well, say some of the things we've done. So we're starting to do reverse auctions on product just to have more transparency in the market. So we sell on contracts and we sell on the spot market, and that's driven around China because most of the consumption around lithium is in China today. Mm-hmm. But we do auctions in Australia for products shipped to China, and we've been doing that just really for transparency in the market and doing different grades. Has historically only been one grade. We know lithium comes in different sizes, shapes, and it's more expensive, less expensive to get to certain quality with a certain grade of material. We've been exploring that to try and put more transparency in the marketplace and understand where the value is in the material. So I think more transparency in how this is priced and how it is carried out, so we can do that in other areas. So if the United States could play a role in that, that would be great. And everyone looks forward to where we can have financial markets so you can hedge your position, whether you're a producer or a purchaser, that you could hedge that and play that with a financial instrument. But the volume of those markets are not there today.
Yeah, and I don't purport to be an expert in the financial markets for these commodities, but I do know that folks in the government have been working to try to, pre-work on getting more transparent price in this, do pilots to get additional transparency in the prices. So, I think that's something that we need to keep pushing on the government to play a role in. Transparency is absolutely critical here. We need a flashlight on all these supply chains, and particularly on the prices that are traded, so we can, again, get to that level playing field. In addition, I'm just trying to figure out where I am here. We've been having such good conversation. You already somewhat answered this, but I'd offer you maybe the opportunity to build on it in talking about some of the technologies where you are competing effectively with China. But earlier this year, or late last year, the Ministry of Commerce somewhat put out a proposal for imposing new export constrictions on lithium processing technologies. And I want to understand from you, how companies like Albemarle are navigating those types of controls. Maybe, again, you're using your different types of technologies where you have a competitive edge. But also, where can we kind of partner and lead in the technology race for this, so we don't have increased technology reliance in addition to some of the mineral reliance that we're already facing?
Right. So, and the industry is somewhat reliant on China for technology. The technology, particularly conversion, has grown up in China and matured there on the back of automotive volume. So it has moved forward quite a bit. They're impressive. In another panel, someone said they were a formidable competitor. I mean, they're very good at developing that technology. So we have for conversion technology, so hard rock to salt, we have that technology outside of China. We operate that in Australia today, so we have access to that. That resides within our portfolio of intellectual property. Direct lithium extraction, so extracting lithium from brines, is kind of it's a buzzword, DLE, but it's a variety of different technologies. We have our own proprietary version of certain approaches to that. So in certain technologies, not the whole portfolio. There's a lot of companies working on different technologies around that. China has some of that, but I think there's a lot of activity in the West around direct lithium extraction, and that's access to brine. So I think the West is we're coming up to speed. We're behind China, clearly, and I think the scale of the automotive volumes coming to market has really driven it forward in China, and they've had that access to that for some time, and the West hasn't. So when we get access to that volume, I think we move forward pretty quickly.
Yeah, Kent was saying this to me backstage, so just again to emphasize, I think, the scale that the automotive sector allows for developing innovation, working on the product line, finessing these products is not something to be overlooked. It really allows for increased advantage as we try to develop this sector more, even though we're approaching it from behind, as you said. And so are you optimistic that we'll be able to leapfrog or just kind of be able to have our own competitiveness at home compared to given the technology challenges you just laid out?
Well, I think there's a lot of work to do. And I think the first hurdle is we have to break this pricing paradigm in order to get projects in the U.S., and then you can start learning from that. So the first projects are going to be more expensive. And it's more expensive to build in the U.S. than it is in China. And then we're going to have to wear that, and then we will learn on the back of that. And I do think ultimately, if we can build our own supply chain here, we'll be competitive, and maybe we can innovate and get better than China. But I think we need to have industrial scale in the U.S. in order to have a good start at that.
Yeah, very fair point. Looking at the whole supply chain, yesterday this was talked about substantially. We need to kind of have an awareness and lean into the connectivity across the different supply chain nodes, and that's something certainly the summit is trying to do by bringing together all of these different purchasers of materials, producers, the transforming companies who do the chemical and processing technologies here. So how are you working with your buyers to ensure, again, this supply chain connectivity, especially as every node of the supply chain has its own competitiveness challenges in different ways? Maybe you could speak to how that's been working, especially as we build up production with kind of the 20% demand and then lithium prices at a lower level, increase in demand.
Yeah, so look, this is everyone in this space is either we're building a new space. People are new in it, or they're transforming their business, right? So our customers, it's the same for our customers as it is for us. This lithium has been around for some time, but never at growth rates like this. So now that we need different volumes, it's changed this industry completely. It's the same for the automotive industry. It's the same for the battery industry. Everywhere along that supply chain, it's a challenge, and everyone's fighting to figure out what that is. So I think we have to work together to work out what that looks like around the world. China saw this early and invested very heavily, and have developed a good supply chain within China, and they're out now trying to secure resources outside of China to feed that machine, and the West has to do the same thing. It's going to require investment, and as I said, those projects will be more expensive initially until we get up that learning curve, and if we can collaborate across the supply chain as much as possible to optimize. So there are a lot of things we can do to optimize between one part of the value chain and the other that didn't happen the first time around. So maybe that's a chance to leapfrog a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate the bright spot. The last question I want to ask is kind of taking some of your global best practices and applying it to kind of the American lithium advantage that hopefully Albemarle is well positioned to lead in. So last week I was visiting the Atacama Desert in Chile, visiting SQM site, and I could see the Albemarle facility from a distance, and I was really struck by how many communities unprompted talked about how they enjoyed their partnership with Albemarle, how they had received support to actually have water testing to see the effects of Albemarle's work on their water quality. And again, you don't always hear these stories in this space, and it's one certainly to be given accolades to. So I'm just curious how those types of social acceptability is not unique to Chile. It is definitely something we need to work on in the United States. It's a dynamic thing. And so in your vast kind of portfolio of projects across the US, how are you working at the state level, community level, local level, potentially indigenous level, to make sure these projects, remain kind of in strong favoring?
Yeah, so we've learned, as you said, we've learned as we do this around the world. Chile is a great example of that because it's a unique environment where we operate. The local indigenous community is very involved in what we do. And we negotiated contracts years ago around how revenue gets shared with them. And I like to think we took those learnings. That's one of the reasons the Kings Mountain permitting process has gone as smoothly as it has. I like to think that. I'm sure there's a little luck in there, and the government's been good working with us and pushing this along. So it takes a lot of different things to make that happen. But I think it's some of those learnings we've been able to take. We've learned that somewhere else. We can now apply it in the United States. Same thing around technology. We struggled when we started our plant up in Australia. That was the first one outside of China. It's up and operating. We learned a lot of lessons there. We can apply that here. So I think having done this around the world, now we can leverage that in the United States. We really have to take advantage of those learnings because they're expensive, right? And you don't want to repeat them.
Yeah, don't want to learn a lesson twice. No, I think it's really wonderful. We're fortunate to have Albemarle in the position, leveraging, again, the very honest, need to kind of grow and scale with challenges along the way, but to do a better job at the end of it. Ken, I want to ask you if you have any final kind of comments you want to make before we close out here.
No, we talked about it, but we operate a global business around the world, and we're following our customers as they go around the world. The demand is not as strong in the United States, but it is coming. We need to build those supply chains because we can't be reliant on global supply chains. They'll fall apart. They don't work. We saw that during COVID. There are challenges around that, and I think the critical minerals, if I take it back to critical minerals, they're important enough that we have to have local supply chains just for industry, for national security purposes, for however you look at it. We need scale, and we need to be the best in the world at that.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. It's a good point to leave on. I really want to thank you again for your joining us, for Albemarle's support of the conference, and for the many key takeaways you've left us with in an honest but optimistic mood. So please join me in thanking Kent Masters for his participation.
All right. Thank you.